Are you curious about what yoga looks like off the mat, or keen to hear how yogis all around the world live? This show will let you in on the secret that there's no such thing as a perfect yogi. Welcome to the Plant-Powered Yoga Podcast. Please welcome your host, yoga teacher, coffee lover, vegan, and known as the Plant-Powered Yogi, Jess Ivers. Hey everyone, Jess here. Welcome to another episode of the Plant-Powered Yoga Podcast. Today's episode is all about my vegan journey. The name of this podcast is the Plant-Powered Yoga Podcast, so I thought it might be time to address why the name Plant-Powered and what that means and how that incorporates into my life. So if you're listening to this and you are vegan, hopefully this is just another cool story you might get to hear about going vegan. If you are listening to this and you're not vegan and would like to maybe hear someone's story about why they did go vegan or vegetarian, then hopefully this is a place for you to come and listen and hopefully be inspired to maybe make some changes, but also know that this is a really non-judgmental space and that by listening to this, I'm not forcing anyone into anything, but I just hope you enjoy my journey as to where I've come to be a vegan over the past 6 years. I've just always really enjoyed hearing other people's stories about how they go vegan and what it was that clicked for them. So I'll share a little bit more about this, but my vegan story, I feel like probably started realistically when I was a kid. It's like all these little things kind of start adding up for you over time. I've always described myself as an animal lover and forever have said that about myself. And it wasn't until I thought about the fact of stopping eating animals that I really feel like I could say I'm an animal lover with confidence after I stopped eating them. But when I was a kid, I always found myself drawn to looking after animals, or if we'd ever go anywhere and there was some goats on the side of the road or there was a dog somewhere, I'd always be jumping over to go and play with it. I loved animals and playing with them, and we had chickens growing up and we had a dog that I loved so much. And it's funny that we had chickens as pets, but I would never ever have thought of eating them because they were pets to me. They weren't just a chicken. So again, it's funny how I didn't quite make that connection straight away with food in that regard, but looking back now, I sort of did as well, because to me they weren't food, they were our pets. But flash forward 15 years, and in 2014 I started learning a little bit more about climate change and the impacts that animal agriculture had on the environment. And one of those things was that the meat industry and the animal agriculture industry actually contributes to more greenhouse gases than the entire transport industry combined. So there was a little something in there that clicked with maybe there's something in this, and that maybe there's something I should be learning a little bit more about. So in that, learned a lot more about deforestation for the animal agriculture industry, which is also to do with a lot of palm oil. Now, even if you aren't vegan, vegetarian, you've probably heard about the dangers of palm oil and the negative impacts that they have on the animal agriculture industry and just animals in general, because palm oil is found mostly in Indonesia, where a lot of orangutans live, a lot of monkeys, elephants, tigers living. There's a lot of animals that are affected by palm oil plantations, and what happens is they knock down the rainforest to grow these palm oil plantations. It's a cheap, easy oil that can be used in a whole bunch of different products, from food, cleaning, shampoos, makeup, all of these different things. And unfortunately, it's become such a common problem all around the world, and it never has to be labeled correctly. So I was learning a whole bunch about that, and this is in 2014. My partner and I at the time were going to Borneo, and the whole point of this trip was to raise a whole bunch of money for the orangutans who were nearing extinction. There's less than 90,000 orangutans left in the world, so I was trying super hard to save these orangutans and tell people about how they needed saving and how they needed our help. And the more I learned about palm oil and the destruction of the rainforest, it just really broke my heart more and more, and I was determined to try and make a change in that. And at the time where I was working, my manager was trying out vegetarianism. She asked me if I was vegetarian, and I said no, I wasn't. And she said that she thought it was quite interesting that I wasn't, because I was trying really hard and working really hard to show how much I was working to try and save the orangutans. That it was interesting I was doing that while I was still happy to eat other animals. And that was the first time that I'd ever put those two things together, that one animal that I think is worth saving isn't as good as an animal that, say, would end up on my plate. At this time also, just adopted a cat. I remember getting home and looking at her going, well, what makes her different from any other animal out there? Yeah, she's my pet and I would never let anything hurt her. You know, she's just become my life. And if anything horrible happened to her, then I would be so upset and so devastated. So why was I happy to still be eating cows, chickens, and other animals and not having a problem with that? And as well, when it comes to animal cruelty, fortunately in one regard, that dogs and cats and pets are under animal cruelty laws. So if anyone was to do anything horrible to my cat, they would be punished. Unfortunately, cows, chickens, sheep, lambs, hens, because they're classified as food, they don't actually fall under any animal cruelty laws here in Australia. So I'm not going to go into what goes on in the industry with how these animals end up on our plates, but you can imagine it's not some nice things that happen. So that was also another thing, that why was there one rule for one animal and another rule for another animal? But also this time, so I've gone to Borneo, I've learned more about the animal agriculture industry, decided that was enough, and basically became vegetarian throughout the middle of that year, and then spent the next 18 months learning about vegetarianism. So just cut animal meats out of my diet to start off with, and was still eating dairy and cheese and eggs, which I know some people go vegan straight away and they just go, for lack of a better term, cold turkey and do it that way. I had to ease into it a little bit more, but over the next sort of 18 months, I guess I decided I would craft my cooking skills a little more, and I do credit going vegetarian as actually a really helpful way for me to learn how to cook properly, because I didn't really know how to cook properly before that. It was mostly just a bit of meat here and there, maybe some veggies or some pasta, probably not super exciting. So learned how to cook and incorporate a few more veggies into my diet. During this time as well, I had been living with some mental illness and anxiety and depression, and while eating veggies doesn't cure mental health issues, and it certainly hasn't changed that much while I have been vegan, but I did notice my mood was getting better, and I felt like even just having a purpose of something to do, whereas it felt like going vegetarian was a purpose for me. It gave me a reason to get excited about cooking, get excited about going shopping, and being like, I'm hopefully not contributing to the cruelty that goes on. And that was a really exciting thing for me. At this time also is probably where I really got into a yoga practice. So again, this is in 2015. I was practicing weekly. Yoga was becoming more and more a part of my life, and a really big part of my life, and just started falling in love with it and how it made me feel. The practice was so freeing, and all of a sudden this link seemed to click between what I was eating and how I was moving. Everything seemed to come back to kindness and treating everyone, yourself, your practice with respect. And so all these little seeds, I guess, were planted during a practice that eventually then became full circle. So in 2016, I decided I want to go vegan and convinced my partner at the time to do it with me. It started out as a 6-week challenge and ended up turning into 4.5 years later, something still happening. I don't think there's many people that can go vegan, know what they know, learn what they learn, and then go back to, say, eating animal product. And that was over 4 years ago now. And since then, veganism has become a really big part of my life that I've incorporated into my practice and also into a number of different ways. So it's not only now how I fuel my body only with plants and plant proteins and plant product, but also in the clothes that I wear. Being vegan isn't necessarily just about what you eat and having soy lattes every day. It's about the way that you want to live your life. And to me, that also includes the products that I want to buy, and I do my best to support local businesses that using vegan-friendly dyes or products that I know aren't contributing to any unfair working situations, because I do also believe that human rights and animal rights are exactly the same. So it's coming, not only for what I put in my body, the things that I put on my body, the props that I use. So even when it comes to buying a yoga mat or things like that, always looking for things that are natural products that, even while it's not specifically a vegan product, in that regard, it is something that's a natural product, something non-harmful. And then also this has even changed the way that I look at some of the places that I might practice, or even some of the teachers that I might look up to. I remember talking with a yoga teacher, or multiple yoga teachers last year around when the Melbourne Cup was on. And unfortunately, the amount of yoga teachers that I saw who were attending the races, and I know this is a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I can't take it seriously when someone is facilitating a yoga class and talking about kindness and ahimsa and how to be treating things with respect, but then still participating in a very cruel event. And yeah, one of the 8 limbs of a yoga practice, one of the yamas, is ahimsa, which translates to non-violent. This speaks to me in many ways about how veganism and yoga connect. And I will be doing a whole episode on ahimsa and veganism and how the 8 limbs of yoga all translate and connect in that way together very shortly. So stay tuned for that, because that is a whole nother thing I want to talk about with a lot of time. But that basically sums up my vegan journey, and I wanted to end the episode with one of my favorite chants, which I won't chant to you, but I will just say that it's Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. And that simply means, may all beings be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words and actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and freedom for all. I remember the first time I heard that was from one of my teachers on my first teacher training, and she was vegetarian or vegan. To me, that just sums up how I want to live my life. And I find that a really inspiring chant, a really inspiring quote to keep living my life the way that I do, that may all beings be happy and free, and may all of my actions contribute in some way to their happiness and freedom. And so today, wherever you're listening from, I'd like to challenge you today to maybe ask yourself that, could you look an animal in the eye and say to them that your appetite is more important than their life? And you can listen to this and let me know maybe what your answer might be, or let me know what your answer is, or not, or just answer that to yourself. But to me, that was one of the most powerful questions that I was asked early on in my vegan journey, and it's something again that I think a lot about, and that nothing is more important to me than an animal's life. And I'm in no way in a space where I should be taking someone else's life just to enjoy a meal. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this little dive into veganism. I'm looking forward to sharing next week's episode with you, which again is about veganism, chatting with Liz Webster from AVS Organic Foods, who owns a vegan cheese company. Looking forward to sharing that with you, so keep an eye out for that one next Wednesday. If you have any questions, or you want to chat about veganism or anything about this podcast, hit me up on my website at plantpoweredyoga.com. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks again for listening to the Plant Powered Yoga podcast. For more information, visit plantpoweredyoga.com or visit the show notes below. I'd love it if you could rate, review, or even share this podcast with a friend. Thanks so much for helping create a kinder world, and see you next time.